So I think this is cottagecore. Not 100% sure, but this is me trying. Ooh. Hi, I'm Caitlin, and welcome to the Lit Review. Today I'm doing a video that is giving you book recommendations based on an album, and that album is Taylor Swift's Folklore album. So I will be giving you 16 book recommendations, some of which you've probably heard me talk about on this channel before, and others that should be new, so it should be a good mix for that. And I have just been loving the new Secret album release from Taylor Swift. I've listened to it a bunch of times. I will not pretend to be like a stan and know like all the hidden lyrics and clues and Easter eggs and stuff, because I haven't gone that deep in my deep dive, but I really do love her music, and to me this is one of her best albums lyrically, and so I just got really excited and wanted to make this video for you. As kind of a disclaimer, I feel like I should say that this concept is not wholly original. Hey everybody, editing me here, coming into the filming space to just let you know, as of like 3 p.m. on the Tuesday before this video goes live, I have seen at least 2 other folks do specific folklore content and wanted to give them shoutouts and credits. I will link them below. There may be more by the time this video goes up tomorrow, but this is what I know about for now, so I think they deserve credit. So first of all, Boston from Boston Reads Books has done an amazing track list recommendation that is all sapphic books. It is just like chef's kiss in terms of like getting the vibe of this album. So like highly recommend that for more like sapphic content. And then we have the Enchanted Reader, who's created a folklore book tag. And I've also seen a handful of other people start to utilize that book tag, but I believe Enchanted Reader is the first one. If not, they're the first one that I've seen do it. So there are other people that have either created or used that tag name. So please go check them out. Please go support them and like go see what other cool stuff they've created for folklore. Seeing people like Tish from Little Wolf do the same kind of like album breakdown with like a BTS album. So like I will link all of their channels below because they are really cool people that I think you should check out. I think reading and music and what you get out of both of those things is super subjective and fascinating because of that. So somebody's recommendations for these songs might be super different from what I'm going to recommend to you. So, you know, that's just my little caveat, but yeah, go check out those folks' channels and their videos. I'll link them down in the description box below. There are 16 tracks on the Folklore album. The first track on the list is just called The One, like the number and not spelled out. And for me overall, it's a really strong start to the album. Like the lyrics on the whole album really stand out to me, but this particular song really just feels like the one that got away and that you're like wistfully thinking about them, not in a like super dark or sad, but just like, hey, we had all this potential and it didn't work out. And so for that, I'm gonna recommend to you one of my favorite volumes of poetry, and that is Love, an Index by Rebecca Lindenberg. I'm just gonna read you the back of the book because I feel like it says so much more than I could. A man disappears while hiking a volcano. The woman who loves him is left haunted and still loving him. Rebecca Lindenberg's poems tell the story of her relationship with poet Craig Arnold, who vanished in 2009 while traveling in Japan. Her billowing, I-contain multitude style lays bare the poet's sadness and joy in longing in verses both lyric and narrative, at once plain-spoken and full of song. If I had to distill Folklore as an album down to one book recommendation, it's this. So if you take nothing else away from this video, please read this book of poetry. It is just so beautiful, and it really does have a lot of those like longing and lost love and like what if this thing hadn't happened to us, would we have made it? Would you have been the one? Me just obsessively telling you to read this one book, that may just be the whole video. The next track is called Cardigan, and this was like the official single for the album, and it's really got a vintage feel. Her vocals are kind of raspy and pared down a little bit, but it's also super wistful and really is about like youth and feeling a little neglected by a relationship or by people, and then being made new in this whole situation. And that reminded me of a book I read recently and would still highly recommend. It's If I Never Met You by Vari McFarlane, because the main character, Laurie, has been dating this guy for 18 years, and he just decides that it's not for him anymore and leaves her, but like immediately gets shacked up and impregnates somebody else, and she is... So it's a romantic comedy book, but it is also so much about her grief and her wistfulness for like those 18 years that she spent with Dan, her ex-boyfriend. And it's kind of a slow burn or slow realization of her romance and being like found and made new and like feeling sexy and relevant again, based on her fake dating relationship. So like, I highly recommend that book, but also really love the song Cardigan. Okay, track 3, The Last Great American Dynasty. If I had to give you just like a quick song synopsis of The Last Great American Dynasty, it would be that it's a song about a dazzling, bold woman who ruins an old blue blood family. And I'm putting ruins in kind of those scare quotes because it's clear from the tone of the song that this woman does not feel like she has ruined a damn thing. So my recommendation for you is going to be The Royal We by Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan. Description-wise, it's like Will and Kate fanfic made whole. And I mean that in like the best, most satisfying way. So it is an American girl at college who falls in love with England's prince and their courtship, and so that's kind of where I'm taking the inspiration from for this song and this book rec, is this like American girl who ruins a blue blood family. And actually they have a sequel coming out, I think within the next month. So I'm looking forward to that book and still really enjoyed the heck out of The Royal We. It is a fun ride. Track 4 is called Exile, and it is the only track on the album that has like guest vocals, and it's Bon Iver. It's a mix of really raspy, again, raspy masculine and feminine vocals, and it's about mischances. And, you know, again, that longing that I talked about in the beginning, and you're just like that feeling of mourning when somebody comes back to you and you're like, no, we missed our chance. Like, I don't want this anymore. And so it's like, there's some really good lines about there. Like, I think I've seen this film before, or I know I've seen this film before, but I didn't like the ending. And so you're shutting a door, essentially. And so, I don't know, something about the fact that it was the only track that had the mixed vocals, the fact that it was a really like deep, raspy male voice with Swift's more raspy, pared down feminine vocals, 100% remind me of Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Like, if I had to do modern imagining of like what these two singers would sound like, it's kind of Exile. It's this. I have talked about this book fairly frequently on my channel, so I don't want to over discuss it. Highly recommend the audiobook of this, but it is definitely a novel about a band and why they broke up. And like, so you get the multiple perspectives and you just kind of get to hear about the songs too. Like, there's a lot of just like song culture in this book. So this felt really relevant for Exile as a recommendation. Track 5, My Tears Ricochet. It has choral components, like it sounds like a church choir at the very beginning. And it's really, again, that longing, that wistful, like a little bit of mourning, but in a cathartic way. And so my favorite line from this song is that, if I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake? It's just like brooding and the right amount of soft angst. And that's another phrase that I would definitely categorize this album as. It is soft angst. and I'm here for it. But the thing I would recommend based on those kind of characteristics and like that, like if I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake, is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And in particular, this really iconic cover where there's like a woman's eyes and she's crying as a cover really evokes what I feel like this song is trying to do. But then also like the whole narrative of Gatsby and Daisy and New Egg, and just roll with me on this. Okay, track 6 is Mirrorball, and I think of all the tracks on the album, Mirrorball is probably the one that resonates least with me. However, aesthetically, it reminds me so much of like an early 2000s film, teen film, and during like the movie montage where like Julia Stiles is staring into a mirror or out a window and she sees her reflection in the window. Like it was a whole like 2000s teen drama comedy mood, and you're like reflecting on your mistakes, and like that's what Mirrorball reminds me of, like, because that song in its tone, in its lyrics, just feels like it came from that time period and like that specific instance. So I picked a book for this recommendation that really reminds me of that time in my life and the kind of book that I wish I had been able to read at that time in my life, and that is Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. And again, another book of poetry, because I think Folklore is an incredibly lyrical album, but this one is like, again, more trimmed down, more spare, and Rupi Kaur's work in both Milk and Honey and her other books is very like short, small poems that hold impact. And I remember thinking that when I read Milk and Honey for the first time, I was like, where was this book when I was 20? Because I needed it, you know, like I needed it then. Me at 30 didn't quite need it in the same way, but me at 20 would have like sopped this up. So that is why I feel very strongly about Milk and Honey and the song Mirrorball, is because it feels like that nostalgic moment. Track 7 is 7 spelled out. It really feels like a reflection on childhood wonder, and it's very sweet and tender and loving. And I really love the line, I think I've got this right, but it's passed down like folk songs, our love lasts so long. It reminded me, again, because of the folktale aspect of it, reminded me a lot of 100 Nights of Hero by Isabel Greenberg. It is the tale of the handmaiden who is spinning folklore and yarns to save her mistress, but they are also in love. The handmaiden and the mistress are in love, and it's really their love story and like what will happen to them and like how society may punish them. But there's something about like how that graphic novel ends, which I won't say explicitly, so I hope you all can read it, but it just reminded me of that like our love is like folklore aspect, and it just recommend. Okay, so track 8 is August. And again, the word I keep bringing up is longing. This one reminds me of like that fleeting summer love, that it's temporary. It reminds me a lot, actually, of a specific character as an adult. So I'm gonna recommend a YA book to you, but I imagine that the adult version of this character would really have the same amount of like longing and wistfulness about temporary love and summer love, and that is Laura Jean from To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. The song reminded me of one of Laura Jean's letters to all the boys she's loved before, but like in a more adult way, and it just reminds me so much of that kind of deeply impassioned reflection on the past, and that is what August is to me. Track 9 is This Is Me Trying, and it has a lot of like horns, and it has a narrative that I think is about struggling with potential, and like whether that's your potential or the potential of a love or a situation. It just feels like the weight of potential that can sometimes like drag you down and make you feel like you're not doing enough is really kind of what's at the core of that song. So again, this reminded me of a specific character, and it was Pablo from Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. One of the things that stuck out to me while reading this book is Pablo's own narrative about how he feels like he has all this potential that he just doesn't know what to do with and doesn't know what that means. And like he feels really stuck by not following a typical path, and you know, like he gets into these conversations with friends or family where they are trying to get him to like use that potential and to get invested or to care about something again. And he just constantly, because of his own depression, is just like, this is me trying, essentially. And so that is why I feel like this is such a good recommendation for that song. And I really, again, just really loved this book, and it's a really good song too. Track 10 is called Illicit Affairs, and the thing that stands out to me, perhaps unfairly, about this is that it felt like I was describing an age gap romance. I don't know if that's entirely justified, but it really did feel like part of the illicit affair of it all was that there was an age gap. I think this is the one that she has some lines about like, don't call me kid, don't call me baby, and that's what probably triggered that for me. So bear with me with this particular recommendation because I think it is probably one of the more discordant notes in terms of the overall recommendation list, but that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, which is a kind of semi-taboo, definite age gap romance. And I say semi-taboo because it's the romance between a young woman and her boyfriend's dad. For me, it's one of Penelope Douglas's best books. Illicit Affair really just kind of chimed that particular note for me because that is how I would describe Birthday Girl. Track 11 is called Invisible String, and it is more upbeat, like it's a little bit more like up-tempo than some of the other tracks on the album, so it's not like a full-blown pop hit. None of them are in the traditional pop hit sense. But it is definitely about like your connection through time and like finding solace in thinking that like something might be meant to be. And so it has like, even though she doesn't use the word fate in the song, it really does feel like there's a bit of fate and like a belief in this great love. And I am going to recommend to you one of my favorite time travel books, which is The River of No Return by B. Ridgway. But it is a time travel romance where a man actually moves forward in time and feels like he has this lost love in the past that he can't stop thinking about, a misconnection. And then he gets the opportunity to go back. And so again, like the idea of invisible strings and your invisible connection is really what made me think of this novel. Track 12 is called Mad Woman. She very clearly feels in this song like she has been gaslit a lot, or at least that's my read on it. Like the line, every time you call me crazy, I get more crazy, stands out. And it just, the phrase also in the song is like, there's nothing like a mad woman. And it's kind of a power anthem, but at the same time, it's like really mournful of like, how is this how we treat women? How is this how we let this happen to each other, both as like from the female perspective, but from like the patriarchy perspective. Anyway, I really enjoy that song. Really great example of this is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. So My Sister, the Serial Killer is about a sister relationship where the main character, Korede, suspects her sister of being a serial killer because she's had to clean up her messes so many times, and it becomes a real conflict for her because she loves her sister very much, but then also has feelings for this doctor that she works with, and her sister Iola starts to kind of date and target the guy that she has feelings for, and this really starts to mess with Korede's head. And just, I feel like, especially towards the end, Korede experiences so much like gaslighting and being told that she's in the wrong and that she's a little crazy, and then you see her behavior like get more to that level because it is exactly that line, every time you call me crazy, I get more crazy. Also highly recommend the audiobook. Track 13 is called Epiphany. And again, this is another book recommendation that something about this song really reminded me of a specific character. Epiphany has this moment that to me just strikes me as like being really about familial loss. There's something about the tone of this song that just felt like mourning again. There's a line about a doctor and holding somebody's hand, and it just really reminded me of January's Journey in Beach Read by Emily Henry. So the novel kicks off like after January's dad has died, and she is grieving and really struggling with what her relationship with her dad was now that she knows this big secret. And like, that's not the whole point of the novel. The novel is actually way more focused on her romance with her like longtime rival August, who lives in the beach house next door. But like her grief journey, January's grief journey, really reminded me of Epiphany. So track 14 was actually very hard for me to figure out what I wanted to recommend, but it is Betty, and it is a multi-perspective song-ish. If I had to define this song in one word, it is pining, and specifically high school, like gossip, romantic gestures, which is how I landed on The Infinite Noise by Lauren Shippen as my recommendation for Betty, based or expanding on the characters from within the Bright Sessions podcast. And it is a male-male romance in high school where both of the individuals have some kind of unusual abilities, but one of the characters is able to like really strongly read emotions, and another character like honestly like struggles with a lot of depression, but like their romance and the romantic gestures that occur between the two, the ups and downs of the characters or the people in Betty reminded me of the ups and downs of Caleb and Adam in The Infinite Noise. So I know I've mentioned this book a couple of different times on my channel in a video that I don't think I've published yet. So to be fair, this is going to be a real head trip, but I really enjoy this novel, and I just came up to me when I was trying to think of how to recommend Betty. Track 15 is Peace, and it is, to me, it seems like a song that even though it's a single narrative, it really, really, really reminded me of almost like different types of love and how they get tangled together and sometimes create conflict even when the goal of that love is to just bring peace. And to like bring solace and love. So this really reminded me of the different narrative perspectives and the different motivations of the characters in Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. So I know I've mentioned this again. This is another book that I've mentioned quite a lot on my channel, so maybe my love for it is why so many things remind me of it. But in particular, I was thinking about like the parents and the teens in this novel, that you get their perspective and like the love that motivates their good and bad decisions. So the way that I think if these characters were given the ability to vocalize what they were trying to do with their actions or their words in different moments, I really feel like would have a lot of connection with the song Peace on this album. So the last track, track 16, is called Hoax. And to me, tonally, this feels like a really twisted love. Like there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of pain, and it really is the kind of like pain that lingers, even though you maybe have moved on or have, you know, gone ahead and done something else with your life, like you're still not over this one thing. Based on that feeling, I'm going to recommend A Separate Piece by John Knowles. So it has been a really long time since I have read A Separate Piece in full, but it is a like World War II era story that takes place at like a boys' boarding school, and there's a lot of like best friends, but maybe more to me, and at least that's how I've always read it, and like the tension and the jealousy and the friction that comes with not understanding your full emotions and then like taking an action that reverberates and that causes lingering pain. I'm trying to be very vague here so that I don't spoil anything for the book, but there is just kind of like that longing, that regret, and the sadness and pain through time as you're telling this story. And that's what A Separate Piece reminds me of. So that's my read on the Folklore album. I have been loving it, and I really do love these books that I'm recommending to you. I hope that my recommendations made sense. I really hope that if you are a Swiftie and really love this album, that you can find something here to love as well. Let me know down in the comments like how you read some of these songs, because to me, again, music is so subjective, and you know, your own life experience might pull something totally different from that song, and therefore maybe a totally different book recommendation. Thank you for spending the time with me. I hope you're having a fantastic reading day. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more of me or this channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!